Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. And Mike, we have had over the next couple of weeks, what we're looking at doing is we just want to kind of deep dive into what we feel are the biggest issues that are causing issues for modern comics. As always, we do not pretend to be the 100% experts on these things. It's largely just two guys with their stacks of respective comics looking at it and trying to come up with what we think is causing harm in the industry right now and some things will hopefully provide some solutions for that. One of the things we talked about in our first week, we talked about pricing and how that's been an issue. Today, we want to look at just sort of repetitiveness. And when we talk about repetitiveness, I think we're talking about two different factors. I think we're talking about too many of the characters who are similar or occupy the same space in the universe. And then also, from a storytelling story standpoint, too many stories that are either absolutely carbon copies of previous stories or just repeating the same events over and over again. As always, we come
Right?
from this as two fans. We want the industry to do well. We are openly rooting for it. It's largely
Right.
just two lifelong fans who are looking at this and saying, hey, here's some issues that we're seeing with the idea of hopefully providing some solutions and just largely talking about what we see. So, Mike, when I talk about repetitiveness in comic books or just too many of the same thing, I think where we can start is with characters occupying the same space. And for you, as a fan of The Flash, this has probably hit your character in the recent years as much as any. So, when you talk about repetitiveness with characters, what stands out to you?
Well, for me, with the Flash, there's like 27 Flashes right now, and you pick up a comic and there's 32 Flashes, and for me, it just it dilutes the character. If you go back to Stan Lee when he said he was inventing Spider-Man, he was saying, well, you eventually you run out of powers. And I don't know if that's the point where we're at now. Are we out of powers, or we just got to put more of the same powers? You got to wonder, like, how much crime can be going on out there in the DC world when there's 27 different Flashes running around, 52 Batmans,
50
157,
Kryptonians, three
yeah,
Wonder Womans.
Kryptonians.
Yeah.
It's got to be tough if you're a criminal in that world. But anyway, it really just dilutes the character. What makes all of these characters special is their unique abilities, right? And so, what you've done by creating this vast number of characters with the same ability is just make that less special. So, although it's interesting in some stories to have, a Flash family or a Superman family or a Batman family, ultimately, these concepts were designed around these singular characters who had very unique powers, extraordinary powers, and how they, how we pretend that they exist in their pretend universe and interact with regular folks like you and me. So having, all these flashes is just kind of makes it less special.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
they're always like the proteges. Flash had his protege, Batman has his, and Superman had his. But and of course, Captain America had the Falcon and Bucky. But ultimately, the ones with the same powers is the ones that kind of get you. There was this big event in Flash where everybody got super speedy powers, and
Yeah.
you never knew where they were going to turn up, and it just it just grew. So for me, it's kind of out of control, and it kind of takes away from the specialness and the uniqueness of all of our beloved characters who inhabit this fantasy world of ours.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think there's two issues with repetitive kind of characters. I think one is, yeah, the power overlap in terms of Superman went from the last son of Krypton to there's like 52 Kryptonians now. Batman, same deal, Flash, that kind of thing. And I think it's okay for multiple characters to inhabit the same powers. I think what the main issue is, not only do you have repetitive powers where it's largely suspension of disbelief that there's like 95 spider people living in the Marvel main universe. But I think you also have where there's this push to have mantles, where like this person is now Spider-Man or this person is now Wolverine or Captain America. And I think the problem you have with that is twofold. I think one, if people are 99% honest with themselves and you really look at it, no matter how much you are told that Sam Wilson is Captain America, or how much you are told that Shuri is Black Panther, or that Bucky is Captain America, or whoever, in your heart's heart, you know it's Steve Rogers is Cap, T'Challa is Black Panther, Batman is Bruce Wayne, and Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And there's a reason that that exists that way. And what ends up happening is there's this push to put all these characters into these mantles. But what we've done is, when you look at the Flash, and I know the Flash has way too many things, now that are similar, but when you look at what they did with Wally, when Wally became the Flash, and obviously Flash was a legacy from Jay Garrick to Barry, but there was huge differences between Barry and Jay and how they were structurally built. Wally became the Flash because Barry was dead, and Barry was out of the game for 20 years. You did not have where they both occupied the main universe as the Flash. What we have now is they don't want to commit to killing any of the characters, but they also want the cachet of that title going to another character. And so that's where right now we have two Captain Americas, we have two Wolverines, we've got God knows how many Spider-Mans and Flashes, multiple Supermans, multiple Batmans, multiple Wonder Womans. And what ends up happening is those characters that you try to push as the new Captain America or the new Wolverine, unless you're going to actually kill the existing character, they never fully fill that role because they feel like a cheap gimmick that's in there. Wally, what I will always give DC credit for is they committed to that. They went full bore and went, nope, Wally is the Flash. And for 20 years, when you hear the name The Flash, it's Wally West. And I'm sure for Barry Allen fans, that was not real popular when that happened. But I
It
have to
was
give
rough.
DC,
It was rough.
what I have to give DC is they committed to it. What they do now is it's largely like, well, we want the credit for saying that we put Sam Wilson as Captain America, but we dang well know we can't kill Steve Rogers. So they're both going to be Captain America. And what ends up happening is Sam Wilson or whoever, Shuri or Miles Morales or whoever it is, most of them just fall under the shadow of who that main character is and then never become it. And Miles may not be the best example because he's kind of broken through on his own. We'll talk a little bit about the problems with Miles and that kind of thing here in a second. But I think the thing is, like Sam Wilson, and you and I, we've been friends for a very long time. One of the very first characters that we kind of connected on, because we used to do this comic book club thing, is we talked about like our 10 favorite characters in comic books. And randomly, you and I think both had Falcon on there, which was very weird because, like, man, I've never met anybody who's like a huge fan of Falcon. And the thing was, Falcon was a great character on his own. He had his role within the Captain America universe. And the problem is now Falcon doesn't get that anymore because he's so busy trying to be Captain America. It's almost as if Marvel went, you know what, Falcon kind of sucks. And the only way he can really be relevant is if we give him the cachet that comes with Steve's role in the Shield. And as a Falcon fan, to be honest, that infuriates me. And that, you know what, your guys' job as a storyteller is to tell a Falcon story where he can be who he is and he doesn't have to need to be Steve or the Captain America symbology behind it. Write a better story. And if you can't do that, then maybe the solution is, hey, let's have a comic run where it's Cap and Sam teamed up. And maybe for 6 to 12 issues, Sam is the focal point and Steve is just there in the background. But they don't seem to do that anymore. It seems
That
to just
formula
be,
worked.
we want to promote it. Go ahead,
That
Mike.
formula worked for a long time, and these side characters would get their moment in the spotlight. I think the for the big two, I think it's a little bit of we need to change these legacy characters to where they're more modern and more relevant. And so they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. Like back in the old days when Barry Allen died, of course, this mantle was going to get passed on to Wally West. But now, and now Barry's back. So there's Barry and there's Wally.
Barry, you got Jay, you got Wally,
Avery,
Wallace. Yeah.
Impulse, Max Mercury, everybody. But the thing about it is that that I think they're trying to, they, like you said, they're not going to commit to killing these legacy characters like they did with the Flash, back in 1985. So they're trying them out for size, and it kind of falls flat because eventually Steve Rogers is going to come back. You knew when they killed off Logan that Wolverine
That's
was
not
coming back
staying.
as Logan. Yeah, and you kind of know, and so it doesn't have its impact. So then, what are we doing with all these characters? And some of them are really cool, like Falcon, and what's the legacy one for Wolverine X-23?
True. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I think that's the thing is, yeah,
they're
you
really
bury
cool.
them under the shadow of that older character.
They're really cool in their own right. And sure, I would. I bought a couple of issues of X-23, and I would love to see that character on its own. But yeah, there is the problem of like having somebody else take up the shield as Captain America and still have Steve Rogers somewhere out there. I mean, wait a minute, what's going on? Yeah,
No,
and
it
and then,
feels
and
like
then
a cheap replacement. And I think that's it. And look, I am not advocating for them to kill off Steve or Pete or anything like that. Those characters should stay. But what you need to realize if you're Marvel is, hey, let's put some character work into these characters if we want to promote them. I'm absolutely all for, hey, we want to give a couple characters the spotlight, promote them a bit, get them more, because hey, creating more characters is good. But what we have happen now is they're not committed to it. So then it becomes repetitive because what they've done now is it's well they need to have 20 different spider people in the same universe. And so like what's interesting is like I talked about Miles a little bit. Miles really worked about a decade ago, and the reason it worked is he was in the ultimate universe. He was on his own and he was the Spider-Man of that universe. Peter had lived, Peter had died. Miles was the ultimate Spider-Man, and in that universe he was. The problem is when you move them into the 616 universe, and all of a sudden there's Peter, and there's Miles, and there's Silk, and there's Spider Gwen from her universe. And it's like, okay, so I'm supposed to buy that all of these people all have spider powers. They all exist largely in New York, maybe different boroughs of New York, but they're all in New York. It takes away any
you see
individualistic
what I mean?
abilities they have.
It dilutes it, right?
Yeah.
Does New York City really need 82 different Spider-Men? And how
Yeah.
is a criminal going to make a living in a place like that? That's just ridiculous.
Well, and I even look at the non-powered people because sometimes power sets look, I mean, power sets can be the same. But I think the thing is, even characters like Batman, and what I always loved Batman was the thing, one guy from his childhood traveled the world, accumulated as many skills as he could, learned under different masters, and dedicated his entire life to becoming Batman. And then now in Gotham, it's basically like, hey, any teenager who took two self-defense classes and can carry a billy club can throw a bat logo on and fight Scarecrow and Mr. Freeze and Joker the same as Batman. And again, it's completely fine to have Robin and Batgirl and one or two other characters. It's when, okay, we have four Robins, we have three Batgirls, and then we throw in Huntress, and we have, Duke Thomas, and we have Harper Row. And it's like there's 52 different vigilantes in the universe of Batman now. It takes away from that specialty part. And what they need to do, very similar to where Miles used to work, is hey, if you want Jason Todd to be one of the four Robins, instead of having him in Gotham, where largely his role is going to be to just kind of be kind of like Bruce, hey, let's have him travel. Maybe he moves to England and fights crime there. Or maybe Tim Drake instead, hey, we want Damian to be Robin. Tim Drake now becomes a globe-trotting vigilante who has a different international feel to his comic books and can meet different characters, right? But when you have everybody's got the same skill set, everyone's in the same thing, it just feels ridiculous. And so I think you end up having where, like you said, have the cake and eat it too, in terms of we want all the credit for we've created this new Captain America, but we don't want to get rid of Steve. And so all you end up doing is you cause a bunch of strife and anger between fans who are constantly on the real blank is the real Spider-Man is this, or the real Captain America is this. And it doesn't work because largely, and I think this is where comics just have to be honest with themselves, people's favorite character is not a mantle. It's the actual character. I am a Batman fan, yes, but if you said Batman is not Bruce Wayne, then I'm not a Batman fan anymore. I'm a Bruce Wayne fan. Right? Bruce Wayne becomes the insider or the outsider or unicorn man or whatever. That's the comic I'm reading. You can put whoever you want in the Batman cowl. That's not the favorite character. And for you, it's the same thing. They could give Barry a different name. Barry is your favorite superhero, not the Flash. And so I think
Right.
that's the thing is they assume it's the mantle. It's not. It's the character. It's the character's journey that we're invested in, not the actual mantle. And they seem to make that mistake all the time. And
I
that's where
think
we
it's
end up with all these repetitive characters.
I think it's so important that you point that out, and it's easy to get lost or forget, why we buy these comics. And yes, it's cool for your favorite character to have this unique ability and do what it does. That makes for interesting storytelling. But where you really fall in love with the character is who they are.
Yeah.
And that's behind every comic fan. You love X-23 because you love who she is. You love Wonder Woman because you love who Wonder Woman is. You love Bruce Wayne. You love Batman because you like who Bruce Wayne is. And I'm the same with Barry Allen in The Flash and Wally too. I've come to appreciate and love Wally, just like I like The Flash. So it like Barry Allen. So it's just it's something that's easy to forget as a content creator mixed up in the spur of the moment. That, oh yeah, we need more of this and more of that, or I can create the same power but with a little bit different angle. It's just not the same, and it ends up diluting the whole effect.
Line, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think the solution on this is I think they absolutely have to thin the herd. I think one of the things is you have to find different niches for these characters. It's not saying that you can't keep Miles Morales. It's not saying that you can't keep
No.
Spider Gwen, but put them in their own universes or give them an actual thing that allows them to have where their comic has a distinct feel. And it's like, okay, when you read a comic book about Jason Todd or a comic book about, one of the other Robins, it genuinely is different. It's not just in another corner of Gotham doing the same thing as Bruce is Jason Todd, right?
Yeah.
Because that makes them feel like a sub character. And again, I think 5 or 6 characters in the Bat family works. It's when we're talking 45 characters in the Bat family. I think 1 or 2 characters who have the Flash legacy is kind of cool. It's when there's Wallace and Wally West that we
Yeah.
have a problem when there's multiple guys. And again, I'm fine with Wallace West existing, but let's clearly delineate him from the other characters. Let's actually have a reason for him to exist, as opposed to just, well, we need another speedster. So
And these some of these characters are great and could stand on their own in like a short run kind of thing. And I think you're right from a writer standpoint. If we took these offshoot characters and gave them a unique locality and a unique storyline and a feel and a look that's all their own, they could have their own offshoot comics. Maybe it's a short run or whatever, and then the kid, dust them off and bring them back every once in a while,
thing
or
is,
occasionally with big events. And this is kind of going to our other issue. They
yep,
can come in for the big events,
yeah,
But that leads us to the other thing that's kind of tied into, which is
repetitive events, repetitive storylines. I think that's the other thing. So not only do we have too many similar characters all trying to occupy the same title, we now have too many storylines that are running through that are exactly the same. And case in point, I'm just going to bring up Amazing Spider-Man from this year. And again, one of the things I know people are going to say is, well, there's always repetitive storylines. Batman's fought the Joker 50 times. That's
yeah,
true. But the thing is, there's a difference between, hey, this week Joker was attacking and he tried to steal a truck, and next week Joker's stealing like a fish truck or something like that in the 70s. Those are two different stories. What I mainly mean is when we talk about events that are exactly the same. And so I was looking through the other day, Spider Man released its 50th issue. Probably its 650th issue because of the renumberings and all that. That was $9.99. And at the end of this Spider Man,
oh,
Peter
nine ninety
Parker,
nine.
yeah, 9.99, right? Yeah. At the
Wow.
end of this issue, Peter Parker becomes possessed by the sins of Norman Osborn and becomes like the Spider Goblin. Now, I remember reading this and thinking, man, this
That
seems
sounds
really similar. It is
familiar.
because in issue 32 and 33 of the same exact run, he was possessed by the sins of Norman Osborn and became the Goblin Spider kind of character. This is what
Oh,
is wrong with comic books in terms of when I talk about repetitive storylines. We are not even 20 issues later. We are recycling the same evil Peter Parker possessed by the Green Goblin. And this is a small example of just in individual ones. This is not to even talk about the fact that we've had Civil War and Civil War II and Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis and Identity Crisis and Heroes in Crisis and Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. We have way too many of the similar problems happening over and over and over again. And
If
it
you're
just
if
lacks
you're a DC
originality.
if you're a DC fan, and the repetitive theme of the crisis on Infinite Earths, and it seems like it's just becoming one infinite crisis after the
No, and that's the thing is the events, the comic books, the repetitiveness of them. One of the things is, and we'll do a larger video just talking about the individual concept of death and how that's really for comics. But one of the things is with these larger events and these storylines, there's a one-upism that tends to take place now where we can't tell smaller stories and they come off repetitive. And again, I look at another modern character that I love a lot of Batman. In Batman 85 with Tom King, Batman 80 through 85, Bane took over Gotham and it was called City of Bane, I believe. And then he left, and James Tynion took over the title. And I think he was on the title for maybe 31 issues. Twice during that time, the Joker took over the city, and during Joker War. And then there was Fear State, where Scarecrow took over all of Gotham. And then Chip Zdarsky joined at 125, and we had where Batman's new villain, Failsafe, took over all of Gotham. That's within about 45 to 50 issues or 60 issues. Gotham's being taken over basically every 15 issues. And the thing is, it's you can tell it's like, oh man, the last thing had someone take over the whole. Okay, well they took over part of Gotham. This character didn't take over all of Gotham, and it's like you just keep running into the same stories over and over and over. And as readers, we're done with it because it's like one, it breaks the immersion. Comic books, look, we get it. It's a fictitious world. None of this is supposed to fit within the regular 9 to 5 world that we live in and the non-powered world we're in. But
right.
even within this universe, there's supposed to be rules. There's supposed to be things that make sense. It starts to strain the credulity when every year there's a crisis where nothing will be the same ever again, except for it's going to be exactly the same 6 months from now. And I think we just have to get away from that.
It's really it loses its impact, and I think the industry's caught in a cycle, and probably a lot of the fans are too, where if it isn't an event, they're not going to pay attention to it. And I don't think that's necessarily true.
No.
I think these big events, like the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, it was impactful. I mean, it was a major event, and
Yeah.
and those need to be saved, like maybe once a decade, not five, or two a
Every single
year.
year or 2 or 3 times
Yeah,
a year.
yeah. I mean, it leads to burnout. And don't forget that your readers can appreciate a small story too, like maybe Spider-Man just helps a troubled kid out, one issue. If you write a good story, your fans will read it, and it doesn't have to always be the end of the universe or Gotham got took over by gangsters again, which I find it hard to believe with 42 Batman that
Yeah.
Gotham could be overrun by
Well,
anybody.
you do wonder where are the 9 Flashes and 52 Kryptonians when Gotham got
Yeah.
taken over? That would be really helpful for
You
them
think
to actually
somebody
show
would
up.
would have time to help Batman over there with his Scarecrow or the Joker? So yeah, I think it's a little bit of burnout to where honestly, like when I see these event books, and you're talking with somebody who's been buying comics for decades, right? I see these events pushed. I purposely ignore them because one, I don't want to get involved in a story where I have to buy multiple books to branch off. I'm
Yep.
paring down my sub list because comics are $5 a pop now. So I'm
Yep.
paring things down. So number one, I'm not going to get involved. And here's somebody who's been buying DC comics since like 1970, right? I'm not going to buy. I'm not going to buy these event series. And number two is because I know whatever crazy notion that they put out there, whatever world breaking they do, will all be undone in 6 issues. So I'm just not going to buy it.
Well, I think, one of the biggest things with comic books that's been lost in the modern thing, and I don't remember the last time I had an issue hit me personally. Some of my favorite comic books as a kid, like I remember the two most influential comic books for me as a kid was Daredevil #7, the original Stan Lee Daredevil 7, where he fights Namor, and Amazing Spider-Man 436, which I mean, neither one of those. I mean, Daredevil 7 is pretty famous. Amazing Spider-Man 436 isn't. But the reason those are two of my two favorite issues of all time in a comic book. Daredevil #7 is largely he's fighting Namor and he is outgunned. He has no chance to win that fight. The world is not at stake. Namor's not trying to conquer the entire Earth. There is no multiverse crisis where Daredevil's life will forever be altered. It is largely just a guy who is absolutely outgunned, but he's like, I will go to death to stop you. And I remember
Yep.
reading that and going, man, I love this character because he has that. Amazing Spider-Man 436 was the same thing. So, small story, the villain Tarantula is trying to get his kid back from his ex-wife, and he's like trying to forcefully take custody of it. And he's a bad guy, obviously, so Spider-Man's not going to let that happen. The entire issue is Spider-Man just getting beaten down beyond belief, getting his like shoulders shattered and thrown through walls, but he won't quit. And the end of the comic, Tarantula largely just looks and goes like, you know what? I could kill you. I'm not going to do it because today you've won this battle just because you're fighting so dang hard for this. And I remember both of those comic books for me as a reader. I was like, that is why I love these characters. It
That's
was not
good
that
writing right there.
Spider-Man. Yeah, and the thing was, it wasn't Spider-Man stopping a multiverse invasion of evil green goblins from dominating the. No, it was a simple story. A good man with power stopping a bad man and doing everything he can. And that's why we love these characters. And I feel like comics don't get that anymore. I feel like it's like, unless you think that I'm going to watch Batman tear down a multiversal version of himself trying to conquer all of Gotham City, that I don't care. And it's like, in all honesty, those comic books don't have the impact because largely I know you can't destroy Gotham City or
Right.
kill the whole multiverse because you're not going to end all of DC Comics. But when you put a small stakes down, there's a part of me as a reader going, man, what if Batman can't stop this guy? Could Batman sustain a temporary loss here? That
And so
drama
then
in that sense is gone in those cosmic events.
and then you wonder if the brick by brick, small brick by small story, that built these characters up to the way they are. You wonder if that is lost in modern comic book telling, where everything has to be a crisis of
Yeah.
infinite crisis, the crisis to outdo the last crisis. But these mantle characters were built brick by small stories like that. Those were just as enjoyable to the readers, and leave the big crisis events for, once in 5 years or 10 years. Make it matter, make it mean something, and trust your customer will buy and love those stories just as much.
I think the thing is, some people will go, okay, well, that's repetitive. You have all these smaller issues. It's absolutely not. It's the foundation of most storytelling.
Depends
When
on the
you
writer.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, like I've been reading Jack Reacher novels for like 30 years now. It's like Jack Reacher's had so many novels where I love those stories. I largely know Jack Reacher's going to beat the villain. I largely know he's going to. But the thing is, I don't. It's a good story. It's a character walking in and seeing him disassemble that small problem, and that's the enjoyable part. It's not that Jack Reacher's flying off of a jet plane, hanging off with two guns, parachuting to Earth, and taking down aliens. That wouldn't fit the story. What's a great story is just a human man using his wits, his will, his skill, and his ability, his unique things to help people. That's why
And
we
that's
like
why you love
Bruce.
Batman.
That's why we like Bruce. That's why we like T'Challa. That's why we like Steve. That's why we like Peter. That's why we like all of these characters. Diana,
Yeah.
whoever it is, they mean something to you because of it. What's funny is you look at all the great character moments people often cite. Very few of them are like them saving the world. Like most Superman fans, the one I know is like there was All Star Superman, where he just talks a girl off of jumping off the roof. He largely just shows up and holds her and tells her it's going to be okay. That I think it's Grant Morrison in All Star Superman. That's one of the most iconic Superman moments. It's not Superman lifting a planet. It's not him like destroying Darkseid. It's Superman using what he has to help the people. And I think
Yep.
we need to get back to that. I think that's the issue. I think we have way too much repetition. We've tried for a grander scale. We've lost the smaller scope. And so as a result, it's all become repetitive. I think that's the same issue happening with the characters, where we don't dedicate to lasting changes, or we're just trying to force every character into the same role. And it largely doesn't work because when you say the Flash, you say Captain America, we know who you're talking about, no matter what you want to call other characters. So I think those are some major issues. To us, that was the biggest thing that we looked at as the second biggest issue, just the repetitive nature of comic books right now. Too many of the same characters, too many of the same stories. We really want to know what you guys think below, though. One of the most fun things for me and Mike in this is just kind of going through and seeing what your guys' thoughts are. So if
The
you agree with us
comments.
on this, please let us know. We will, again, we never pretend we're the absolute experts on this. This is simply just two guys' opinions. We're lifelong comic book fans, just going through and airing what they think is happening with the industry. And most of all, we are rooting for this to get better. I think that's the big thing with me and Mike on this
Absolutely.
channel. Is we want these things to get there. With the criticism that we're coming with is largely just as folks who are really wanting these things to turn around and do
I
better.
need I need more stacks of comics.
Always good to add more comics to the stack. As always, folks, thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate it. Let us know what you think below. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you do subscribe. We'll love to keep bringing this to you. I think the next one we're going to look at with this one, Mike, I think we're going to look at kind of the repetitive nature, not repetitive nature, but more kind of these reboots, the renumberings, all these things going on. The loss of canon overall is maybe what we'll look at with the next video that we took at. But as always, folks, we appreciate you watching. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.